My name is Randy, and I'm 63 years old. The shadow hanging over my life started when I was 39. It happened in the small town of St. Bernard, Louisiana, a damp, humid place that always smelled like mud and was thick with stories that were never quite finished. In this town, the name Dorothy was famous for all the wrong reasons. She lived all alone on the grounds of a pet cemetery that sat far away from the rest of the neighborhood. People loved to spread rumors about her. Some said the cemetery was haunted. Others whispered she had a secret stash of hundreds of thousands of dollars buried somewhere. Some even called her a black widow because both of her husbands had died there. One she shot in self-defense during an attack, and the other took his own life. After her mother passed away 6 years ago, Dorothy fell into a deep depression. She relied heavily on medication and help from a few friends and hired hands to keep the place running. In April of that year, a close friend of Dorothy's called the cops because she hadn't heard from her in days. When the police arrived, the house looked normal. The TV was still on, and there was a half-finished glass of wine on the table. But Dorothy was gone. The news spread like wildfire. Every local hangout had a new theory. Some thought she just walked away, while others pointed to the haunted cemetery and her dark past. I heard the stories, but I didn't buy into the drama. I saw Dorothy as a lonely, harmless woman. Because of that, I joined the volunteer search party along with the police and some of her friends. We spent days combing through the woods around the cemetery, moving further out each time. The first few days were exhausting and frustrating because we found absolutely nothing. On the afternoon of the 5th day, I accidentally got separated from the group. I pushed deeper into the swampland where the air gets thick and smells like stagnant water and rotting plants. As I got closer to a stream that fed into the Mississippi River, I noticed something wrong. The water was rippling strangely, and there was a foul smell that was much worse than the usual swamp muck. I stepped closer, and then I saw it. A body was floating there, bloated and pale gray. The arms were tied tightly behind the back. The head was covered with a plastic bag, and heavy chains were wrapped all around the torso. I ran to get the search team. Just as we feared, it was Dorothy. The police taped off the area and pulled her to the shore for the autopsy. The coroner ruled that she died from suffocation. The chilling part was how the killer did it. They put a plastic bag over her head, tied her limbs tight, and wrapped her in heavy iron chains to make sure she stayed at the bottom of the river forever. They could only identify her by a cross tattoo on her left index finger. A month went by, and the police had 0 leads on the killer. One afternoon, I stopped by a local diner I always went to. On the bulletin board near the door, a faded "missing" flyer for Dorothy was still pinned up. I ordered a beer and sat in a quiet corner. A man walked up and asked to join me. I recognized him because I'd seen him a few times during the search for Dorothy. He had a distinct scar that ran from his forehead, down his right eyelid, and ended at his cheek. He didn't give me his name, even after I asked. We clinked glasses and talked about random things until the conversation eventually drifted toward Dorothy's murder. Right then, the air in the room felt like it turned to ice. His friendly look vanished. His eyes went dark and distant. He started talking about how easy it is for someone to disappear in the swamp. Then, in a low, gravelly voice, he let out details that made my skin crawl. Exactly how a body needs to be tied, how to cover the head, and exactly how many times the chains need to be wrapped so it never floats back up. I didn't say a word, but my whole body went stiff with fear. Suddenly, he stopped and stared right at me. The fake friendliness was gone. He looked cold. He spoke slowly, making it sound more like a fact than a warning. Some things are better left lost. And people who know too much, they don't get to live quiet lives. He finished his beer, flashed a polite, empty smile like nothing had happened, and walked out. I just sat there, my mind blank, drenched in a cold sweat. I didn't go to the police about that meeting. I didn't tell a soul. I was haunted by his eyes, but I convinced myself I had no real proof. I told myself it was just a coincidence, that maybe the guy was just crazy. Over time, the case went cold. No suspects, no progress. It became just another old story. Nearly 20 years later, as my health started to fail and the quiet moments got longer, the memory of Dorothy and that man became unbearable. The image of that body in the muddy water played on a loop in my head. My fear turned into crushing guilt. I realized I had been holding the key to the whole mystery for 2 decades. I couldn't live with the silence anymore. I finally picked up the phone and made an anonymous call to the police. I told them everything about that man in the diner. The investigation was reopened with a real target. Using modern technology and records, they finally identified him. He was the killer. His name was Brandon Nodier. He had tricked Dorothy into signing over the cemetery for almost nothing while she was incoherent on her depression meds. When Dorothy realized she'd been scammed, she sued to get her land back. The court date was set for just 10 days after she disappeared. Brandon was desperate. If he lost, he'd lose the land and go to jail for fraud. To make sure the lawsuit died with her, Brandon and a handyman named James Trigler went to her house that night. When Dorothy opened the door, Brandon strangled her, bagged her body, and dumped her in the Mississippi. Justice finally came, but it was far too late. Dorothy had been gone for a lifetime, and I had spent all those years living with a fear and a guilt that can never truly be washed away. The story is inspired by a real-life case. In April 1985, in St. Bernard, Louisiana, Dorothy Thompson, 60, living alone in a pet cemetery, suddenly disappeared. 20 days later, her body was found bound, blindfolded, and submerged in the Mississippi River. The case remained unresolved for 24 years despite numerous suspects. In 2009, an anonymous call accused Brandon Nodier of murdering her to seize her land. He turned himself in 2012, closing the case.
My name is Carrie. Last year, right when I turned 50, my company transferred me to manage a new supermarket branch in the suburbs of Texas. After nearly 20 years of working in loud, crowded cities, moving to a quiet neighborhood with a slower pace of life felt incredibly refreshing. The apartment I rented was very close to the store, so I chose to walk to work every day as a form of exercise. The route was simple, with only one annoying part: a long, concrete incline that connected 2 streets in the neighborhood. I noticed that in the middle of that hill, all along the concrete wall bordering the road, dozens of white papers were taped up side by side. At first, I thought they were advertisements or neighborhood announcements. But as I got closer, I realized every single paper had the exact same sentence written on it: "Do not turn around." I stood there for a few seconds, looking from one paper to the next. It wasn't just 1 or 2. There were dozens of them stretching almost the entire length of the hill. I thought it was bizarre. If it were just one sign, it could be a prank, but seeing that many felt like a dead serious warning. I looked around the hill. Of course, I had to turn my head to do so. Nothing happened, so I just headed to work. During my lunch break, I told a few longtime employees about it. Most of them just shrugged, saying they had seen the signs but didn't pay them any mind. Only Tom, a middle-aged man, turned completely serious. He told me that a few months ago, there was a college student named Mikey who worked part-time at the store. He used to walk home over that hill at night. One night, Mikey felt like someone was standing behind him. When he turned around, he claimed he saw a ghost, a gaunt figure with a twisted, monstrous face under the dim glow of the streetlights. Mikey quit his job immediately after that, paralyzed with fear. He wasn't the only one. A few other people had also panicked while passing through there at night. I just laughed it off. In a quiet suburb like this, urban legends like that are pretty common. Then came a late night when I finished my shift much later than usual. As I stepped onto the incline, the air suddenly became eerily quiet. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then I heard it clearly. A soft breathing sound, very close, right behind my back. Despite remembering the dozens of signs along the road, I couldn't help my curiosity. I turned around. At the top of the hill, under the sickly yellow glow of a streetlight, a thin figure stood motionless in the shadows. As the figure slowly stepped forward into the light, I froze. It wasn't a ghost. It was a woman. But her face, it was horrifying beyond belief. Her skin was pulled tight and crisscrossed with thick, jagged scars. Her features were so badly mangled, she looked like a piece of paper that had been crumpled up and then torn apart. Her face was so distorted it barely looked human anymore. The woman stared directly at me. Her shoulders began to shake, and her heavy breathing turned into a sob. Then she let out a raspy, mangled scream that echoed through the narrow pass.
I found you, you bastard! Give me back my face!
As soon as the words left her mouth, she lunged straight at me. I was stunned, and my reflexes were a second too slow. By the time I managed to turn and run, she had grabbed the back of my jacket. During the struggle, I realized she was clearly a person made of flesh and bone, not an apparition. She frantically kept repeating that same sentence over and over in a shrill, hateful voice. After a chaotic scuffle, I managed to break free and ran for my life away from the hill. My heart was pounding, and my legs were shaking so hard I almost tripped several times. I called the police while I was still running. The police arrived quickly and managed to restrain the woman. I was taken to the station to give my statement. A little while later, a young man in his early 20s rushed into the station. He introduced himself as Kevin and said the woman was his mother. Kevin bowed his head and apologized to me repeatedly, then explained the whole story. A few months back, his mother had been in a hit-and-run accident right on that hill. She survived, but her face was severely injured and permanently disfigured. The driver fled the scene and has never been caught. Since the accident, Kevin's mother had suffered a complete mental breakdown. She would wander around the hill at night with only one thought in her mind: finding the person who hit her. She believed that person would eventually return. Kevin was the one who had taped up the long rows of "Do not turn around" signs. He hoped to prevent people from accidentally seeing his mother's face in the dark to avoid causing a panic. But not everyone listened. After hearing the whole story, I sat in silence for a long time. So, Mikey's story was true. I realized how much pain and desperation Kevin's mother must have endured for her mind to break that way. Since that day, every time I passed that hill at night, I still vividly remember that woman's distorted face in the dim light. But the feeling that stays with me isn't just fear. It's a haunting sadness for the tragedy that a human being can be forced to carry.
I'm Erica Walker, a psych major in my second year at UCLA. I still remember the first time I showed up at Joseph's place, a huge mansion out in the suburbs of Santa Barbara. They live in one of those gated neighborhoods where the streets are wide, luxury cars are parked everywhere, and every house looks like it was designed by a top-tier architect. I was hired to look after Joseph's two kids, Henry, who's 12, and Ramon, who's 9. Joseph and his wife are both big-shot lawyers, always on the go, and sometimes they're gone for weeks. My first day there was pretty chill. Henry's a smart, polite, and energetic kid. He was on the school basketball team and totally into reading. Ramon, though, I still remember the weird chills I got the first time he looked at me. He had black hair, dark hazel eyes, and this faint little smile that never really changed. Unlike his brother, Ramon barely talked. He just stared at me a lot. After about a week, things stopped going so smoothly. The stuff in my room kept getting messed up, furniture out of place, a pencil gone, my notebook flipped to random pages, and the window I know I shut was wide open when I woke up. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid, probably just tired and stressed from adjusting to everything. But then one night, while I was helping Henry with his homework, Ramon walked in looking serious. Ramon's voice was totally flat, no emotion at all, when he said Henry tried to strangle him when I wasn't looking. Henry freaked out, started crying, and looked completely terrified. Thing is, I'd been with Henry all afternoon. Ramon was straight up lying. And not just a little lie. This was serious. I tried to keep it calm and told Ramon that if this was some kind of joke, it really wasn't okay. Right then, his eyes went ice cold, like he was looking right through me. "You don't know anything. You'll regret it," he whispered. I told Mr. and Mrs. Joseph about what happened, but they just laughed it off, said Ramon had a wild imagination and liked to make up stories for attention. But over the next few days, things started getting a little more concerning. I found out Ramon had told the neighbors his parents locked him in the closet whenever he messed up. When I gently brought it up to Ramon, he just stared at me with that blank expression and faint smile, then said, "The babysitter before you ran away because of me, but no one ever found her." His words sent chills down my spine. I asked Mr. and Mrs. Joseph about the last babysitter, and all they said was that she quit suddenly for personal reasons. They were so chill about anything involving Ramon, almost amused, like they thought it was just typical moody kid stuff. One night, after I finished reading to Henry, I went back to my room. When I pulled the covers back, I found dozens of pins scattered all over the mattress, pointy ends facing up. I just stood there, frozen. It felt like someone really meant to hurt me. I freaked out and bolted from the room. And there he was. Ramon was standing at the end of the dark hallway. He was just staring at me with that same little smile on his face. Before I could say a word, he turned around and walked back to his room. I didn't say anything to Mr. and Mrs. Joseph. I was scared they wouldn't believe me, or worse, that they'd think I was making stuff up to trash their kid. So I decided I'd just keep a closer eye on him and try to find proof that something wasn't right. One afternoon, Henry was off at basketball practice, and Ramon told me he was going to stay in and do homework. But I found him outside, in the backyard. He was digging a small hole under the old oak tree. I was curious, so I hid behind the wall and watched. Ramon dropped something into the hole, covered it up with dirt, then stomped it down with his foot. He glanced around, nervous, then headed back into the house. Once I was sure he was inside, I slipped out into the yard and started digging where he'd buried it. What I found made my stomach turn. A rabbit, its neck slit and its legs tied up with rope. Right next to it were two more rabbits, already starting to rot. I ran back into the house and threw up in the bathroom. When I looked up, Ramon was standing in the doorway, just watching me with this weird, curious look. "You shouldn't dig up things that aren't yours." His voice calm in the creepiest way. I finally decided to go to Mr. and Mrs. Joseph about all the weird stuff Ramon had been doing, but they just looked at me, confused and stunned. Mrs. Joseph was firm that no way her son could do something like that. Ramon was standing right next to her, staring me down like he knew exactly what he was doing. He said it was the neighbor's kid who killed the rabbits, and he'd only buried them because he felt bad. As for the pins in my bed, he claimed he had no idea what I was talking about. Mr. and Mrs. Joseph totally bought it. I just stood there, speechless. Then one night, I woke up and saw Ramon standing next to my bed, with a kitchen knife in his hand. My heart nearly stopped. He didn't move, just stood there, staring at me like he was lost in thought. "It won't hurt. I've done this before." I screamed and jumped out of bed. I heard quick footsteps and the door flinging open. I heard footsteps pounding down the hall and the door flying open. Ramon quickly shoved the knife under my bed right before Mr. and Mrs. Joseph burst into the room. I told them everything, what I saw, what he said. But Ramon just gave them those wide, innocent eyes and said he was sleepwalking. And of course, they believed him. Again. They walked him back to his room while I was left standing there, terrified and shaking. That's when I knew I needed to get out of there, fast. But part of me couldn't stop thinking about Henry. What would happen to him if I just left him alone with Ramon? The next morning, I'd made up my mind. I was going to tell Mr. and Mrs. Joseph the first was quitting. Suddenly, Mrs. Joseph stormed into the living room with this furious look on her face. She slammed a small box onto the table and opened it. Inside the box was this fancy pearl necklace. Can you explain why my jewelry was in your bag? I was completely stunned. I'd never seen that necklace before in my life, let alone touched it. Then I looked past her, and there was Ramon standing in the doorway with that same smug little smile. That's when it hit me. I'd been set up. But no one believed me. They fired me on the spot. Mr. and Mrs. Joseph said I should consider myself lucky they weren't calling the cops. I walked out of that mansion with my heart sinking. I was still worried about Henry, but deep down, I knew no one would believe me if I told the truth about Ramon. After everything, I promised myself I'd never babysit again. I moved to a new city, got a different job, and tried to leave it all behind. Then one day, I stumbled across this article with a headline that made my blood run cold. Prominent lawyer and wife killed in mysterious house fire. It was Mr. and Mrs. Joseph. They had died just a few days earlier in a fire at their home. The cause was still under investigation. But what really got to me was the part about their kids. Henry and Ramon had made it out alive. According to the article, Ramon said he woke Henry up after smelling smoke, and the two of them managed to get out just in time. In the initial report, the firefighters mentioned they'd found an empty can of insect spray behind the fireplace, the kind that's flammable. One neighbor even told reporters she'd seen Ramon in the backyard a few days earlier, messing around with the spray can, laughing and calling it an experiment. I had all kinds of mixed feelings when I read that article, especially after seeing what Ramon had said. 2 weeks later, I found out Henry and Ramon were staying with their aunt. They were living pretty comfortably, thanks to the inheritance Joseph and his wife left behind. Even though I still had a ton of questions about the fire, I decided to let it go and bury that whole nightmare deep in the back of my mind. I knew one thing for sure. Whatever secrets the Joseph family had, it was best I stayed far, far away from them.
I went back through the messages from my best friend who disappeared 10 years ago and found out some really disturbing things. I'm Leon, 30, and I live with my wife in Washington. It's been exactly 10 years since I lost my best friend on March 13th, 2014. He was the one who had accompanied me since my childhood. His sudden disappearance shocked everyone. I can still clearly picture his mom's pained and haggard face. The search spread across Washington state and the neighboring states, and it went on for a year. Eventually, the police had to call off the search because nothing turned up. Every year on this day for the past 10 years, I think about him and go through the photos we took together. Today was no different. I remembered his social media account and checked it out. I was moved when I realized he was stuck at 20, while I've grown into an adult. When I checked the messages, the last one he sent me was also on this day, 10 years ago, and I never replied. As I scrolled through our conversation, I was shocked to see how much he had to say. He used to say those things to me all the time, but I just ignored them. Maybe I was just too careless back then. February 25th, 2014, 12 a.m. Leon, you must be asleep, but I can't sleep because that evil spirit is watching me. February 25th, 2014, 3 a.m. Do you believe in heaven, Leon? I've always wondered if there's really a heaven for good people and a hell for evil ones. I read his thoughts too late. I did reply to the message, but it was pretty superficial and perfunctory. The more I read the messages, the guiltier I felt toward the friend I always saw as my soulmate. February 13th, 2014, 12 a.m. Leon, this is my blog. There are many things I can't tell you directly or text you. I ignored the link he sent. Why? I clicked on the link and it led to a private blog. There aren't many posts, and they were all published in a short period of time. February 2nd, 2014. I think I'm the only one who knows this, Leon. I was sitting by the window in my room and noticed a small space in Mr. Joseph's house. Do you remember him? The neighbor was really friendly and lovable. But no, that was just a perfect mask for an evil person. I saw him torturing his wife, Leon. February 7th, 2014. Cassie. It looks like she was murdered by her own husband. I heard her pleading in a very pitiful way, and then a sound of an impact. Nothing too loud, but clear enough for me to hear. And after about 20 minutes, I didn't hear Mrs. Cassie's voice anymore. Leon, it looks like I was discovered. That nice neighbor noticed me. I remember that year, Cassie went missing, and the police found her in the basement, having committed suicide. I remember that after Cassie's case, he started showing signs of fear and spoke less. He was usually very quiet, so no one noticed anything unusual about him. A week later, he didn't come to class. I texted him, and he said he wasn't feeling well because of insomnia. That was the only message where I showed concern for him. I kept reading his blog after that. February 20th, 2014. What should I do, Leon? My nerves are about to explode. I'm too scared to sleep, leave the room, or even take my eyes off the window. I'm afraid that the devil might come after me at any time. But I can't tell anyone about this. The devil's eyes are really scary. Help me, Leon. March 13th, 2014. I don't think I'll be able to escape the devil, Leon. I feel like I'll end up like Mrs. Cassie, in a dark place where no one knows. I burst into tears when I read these last lines. The last post on the blog was also the day he went missing. Unlike Mrs. Cassie's, his disappearance turned into a mystery that's still unsolved. But today, after 10 years, I've uncovered this terrifying secret. I cried a lot, feeling incredibly regretful for having missed so much. Once I calmed down, I called the police and gave them all the evidence. His mother fainted when she heard the story. I know she's been holding on to hope for the past 10 years. A mother's strong belief that her son is still alive and will come back. But the miracle didn't happen. The police found a skeleton in the basement of Mr. Joseph's house, lying curled up with signs of decay. The clothes were familiar, so it was definitely him. But we need to wait for the forensic exam results. After 3 days, everything was clear. He was killed by Mr. Joseph at night and hidden in that basement for the past 10 years. He renovated the house, sealing off the basement completely so it wasn't used anymore. Everyone assumed it was because he was too sad about his wife's passing, but in reality, it was a way to hide his cruelty and heartlessness. He got life in prison without parole. My friend's family had to face bad news twice, and now they have no hope left. They moved away to escape the pain. I'll never forget my friend.
My fiance is working at a really awful job right now. I'm Mark, 29 years old, and I'm working as an engineer. My fiance was Erica. She was 27 and worked as a doctor at a local private clinic. We'd been dating for a year and we were planning to get married at the end of the year. I really loved Erica. She had all the qualities of an ideal partner and wife. We got along by listening to and understanding each other in every situation. We used to surprise each other with little things that show just how much we care. Erica's job often came with unexpected issues, so she got home late. The day I found out about the terrible thing was just like that. That evening, Erica texted me to have dinner on my own and not to wait for her. Erica had an emergency case, so she wasn't sure exactly when she'd be done. I had a quick meal, made a special beefsteak with potatoes and bread, and then brought it to the clinic for Erica. I knew she'd probably skip a meal or just have some juice if she was too busy with work. The food was all ready, along with a note with some loving words. I drove over to the clinic where Erica works. It took about 15 minutes to get from home to the clinic, so the beefsteak stayed nice and warm for Erica to enjoy. When I arrived at the clinic, I noticed an unusual quietness and the strong smell of medicine, one of those distinctive scents you get in clinics and hospitals. I called Erica, but she didn't answer. The surgery must have still been going on. I decided to drop off the food in her office and then head out. Walking down the hallway, I tried to remember and find Erica's office. Why are all the waiting rooms dark? I kept walking and wondered. If I wasn't wrong, the room at the end was where Erica sees patients. It was dark, too, so I cracked the door open and looked inside. I smelled something pretty unpleasant. Hard to describe, but it was a mix of a weird, fishy smell with a hint of antibiotics. I was feeling around for the light switch, needing a bit of light to figure out where to place the food so it'd be noticed quickly. After struggling around for a bit, I finally found it. The lighting in the clinic seemed brighter than usual. I squinted and turned around, making a few faces for a few seconds before I could see clearly, and I grabbed my chest, feeling my heart racing wildly, and backed up until my body hit the wall behind me. In front of me was an operating table with a man lying on it. More accurately, the body of a man. He was missing his left leg and right hand. It looked like his eyes had been operated on too. It took me a few minutes to remain calm. Then I moved closer to the body. If you think I was being brave, it was not entirely true. I was mostly just curious, because I noticed something unusual about his head. For a few seconds, I thought it might just be a medical model or something used for training. But no, as I got closer, I realized he was missing one more thing: his brain. I covered my mouth and collapsed to the floor. I shouldn't have let my curiosity take over my mind. I took a look around and was shocked for the third time. There were many glass jars containing human body parts: eyes, livers, kidneys, brains, and more. They were carefully preserved and even had price tags on them. I sealed my lips, trying to stay as quiet as possible, while inside I was screaming. I remembered horror movies about organ trafficking and body parts. The sound of the door opening and some voices made every nerve in my body stand on edge. I panicked, looking around, and realized I needed to hide quickly. There was a door leading to a storage room, and thankfully it wasn't locked. I quickly went inside. The voices became clearer. It seems like a man and a woman talking to each other. They were talking about something related to corneas, I thought. The voices of those people got fainter and farther. They didn't come into this room. I let out a sigh of relief, but just as I reached for the door handle to leave, another hand grabbed my pant leg. A man missing both his ears with his mouth stitched shut was locked inside a metal cage. I was shocked for the fourth time. What other horrible things could be in this clinic? I knelt down looking at the man, my eyes stinging and blurring with tears. He was in a kneeling position, looking incredibly miserable. His suit was dirty and torn, suggesting he must have had a high-status job or position at some point. What have you been through? The man started crying and pointed toward the door of the storage room. Did those people out there do this to you? He nodded vigorously, crying, and reached his hand out of the cage, hoping I would help. I stood up, looking around, trying to find something to break the lock. There was only a small amount of light coming from outside the clinic, so I couldn't see much clearly. I used my phone's flashlight to facilitate searching. As I turned around, the flashlight beam revealed another disfigured face. A girl with her mouth and eyes stitched shut was huddled inside another cage. Other muffled groans emerged, and as I shone the flashlight around, I was shocked for the 5th time. Beside the man and the girl, there were 6 or 7 other metal cages, and everyone inside had their speech restricted in some way. Some were still intact and clean, while others were motionless. I didn't know if they were still alive. It felt like being a superhero needing to rescue hostages. I was both scared and hurried, searching for a suitable weapon, but I couldn't find anything. I fell, crashing onto some unidentified objects. I let out a loud cry of pain. I got up, quickly grabbed my phone, and ran out of the storage room to the clinic. I hit the gas straight home. I've been sitting in the car for nearly 5 hours, still not going inside the house. It is nearly dawn. Erica still hasn't come home, and I'm not sure how I'll face her. She's definitely going to know I went to the clinic because the food and the note are still there. The eyes of those imprisoned in the storage room still haunt me. I dialed the police, but I couldn't have the courage to press call. The clinic is involved in something horrific and cruel, but Erica is related to it. I love her so much. We even have a future with plans. I grew up with a serious fear of water and a woman I can't really remember what her face looked like. My fear of water is tied to that woman. The only thing I remember about her is her long brown hair and her gentle voice. There was a time I pushed myself, determined to get over my fear by learning how to swim. But the image of that brown-haired woman kept popping up, throwing me off. Especially when I'd finished swimming and come up for air. The more I tried to catch my breath, the more I felt out of breath, losing my composure and getting all panicked and scared. There were a bunch of times I almost drowned and ended up in the ER. Eventually, my dad put a stop to it because my health and mental state were just getting worse. I lived with my dad in a pretty big house downtown. Like a lot of kids, I used to ask my dad about my mom all the time. My dad came up with all kinds of reasons to explain why my mom wasn't around. Later on, my dad would just give a little smile whenever I asked about it. I remember when I was little, I'd always cry loudly whenever my dad gave me a bath. I was really scared when I saw the bathtub full of water. When I got a bit older, my dad gave in and remodeled the bathroom, so we didn't have the bathtub anymore. It wasn't until I was 15 that I told my dad about my fear of water and the woman with the brown hair. I was worried he wouldn't believe me. My dad was so shocked that he almost crashed the car into a light pole. My dad kept asking me how I was feeling and immediately took me to the hospital to see a therapist.
Do you know anything about the brown-haired woman?
My question made my dad freeze, and he stared at me for a long time and then just smiled.
There are many brown-haired women, son.
I stayed quiet because there were things I just didn't know how to explain to my dad. What does Mom look like?
Your mom is really beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman in the world.
Is she coming back, Dad?
Dad didn't answer. He just looked at me, smiled, and seemed lost in thought.
Mom, doesn't she need us anymore?
Dad reacted right away to my question. Dad came over, hugged me, looked me in the eye, and made sure to stress each word.
Your mom loves you very much. Remember this.
I saw his nose and the corner of his eyes start to turn red. That was the first time I'd ever seen him cry.
Your mom has brown hair and eyes just like you. She passed away when you were very young.
I didn't expect to see my mom again since she was gone, but I wanted to find out everything I could. A lot of times when Dad wasn't around, I'd sneak into his room to look for photos or mementos of Mom. I found a medical record with the name Keva Martinez, my mom. I read through each medical exam result based on the dates on the record. My mom had severe depression. The follow-up exams and treatments didn't make her condition any better. I looked up everything I could find about my mom online, hoping there was more info out there besides these medical records. While searching through various websites for personal info, I also found out Keva Martinez, 27, drowned last night at the lake in town. They figured out it was because she climbed over a barbed wire fence to get away from the hospital. Keva's funeral is set for this afternoon. She wasn't guilty of attempted murder 3 months ago because of her depression. Her husband, Richard Martinez, tried to save their 3-month-old son when he found Keva trying to drown him in the bathtub. After finding out everything, I locked myself in my room for 2 days. Dad was really worried about me. I asked my dad for some time to calm down, but didn't let him know that I knew everything. On the 3rd day, I came out of the room feeling a lot better. During dinner, I asked my dad,
Dad, do you love Mom?
Dad looked at me, a bit surprised, and said,
A lot. More than I love you.
Both of us smiled.
Is there anything you haven't done with Mom yet?
I regret not loving and caring for your mom more. Let her suffer through pregnancy and even during childbirth.
I smiled. That was the last time I asked about my mom. When I turned 18, I was free to live my own life, but I gave that freedom back to Dad. It was time for Dad to find someone new and seek out his own happiness. Then Aunt Lanny came along, and she was in the same situation as Dad. I saw Dad really happy and smiling a lot, just like he was when he found out I passed the entrance exam at a top university. The neighbor was always at the window every night, and then I found out the creepy truth. I'm Glenda, 28 years old. I just moved into an apartment after my lease ended at my old place. My apartment's in a mid-range complex with 2 buildings facing each other. I spent a couple weekends cleaning the place and grabbing some stuff. I worked hard to make the place comfier, and I was pretty proud of how it turned out. But I didn't see the nightmare coming my way. I went to open the window for some fresh air on the 7th floor, the top floor, and spotted a dark shadow by the window in the apartment across from mine. I didn't think much of it and just kept looking around my neighborhood, feeling this weird kind of happiness. Later that evening, while I was chilling on the couch watching TV, I glanced over at the window of the apartment across, and that same dark shadow from earlier was still there. I looked a little closer, and it seemed like it was a guy, but I didn't think much of it. It'd be kind of weird to just stare into someone else's window. Pretty quickly, I got my life on track in the new place. I said hi to the neighbors, trying to make some good connections. On the second evening, after getting home from work, the first thing I did was head to the window and throw the curtains open to let some fresh air in. I was kind of shocked to see that black shadow still at the window across the way. The owner of that apartment probably just loved chilling by the window and people watching. That night, I stayed up pretty late dealing with some last-minute work stuff. By the time I wrapped up, it was almost 2 a.m. Even though I was super tired, the second I looked at the window, I was wide awake. The black shadow was still there, hadn't moved at all since 8 hours ago. I started getting a weird feeling, so I closed the curtains and went back to my room. It took me forever to fall asleep. The next morning, I ran into my neighbor as soon as I left the house. She said she'd been living here for almost 10 years, so I asked her about the apartment on the 7th floor in the building across. His name's Charles, around 60 years old. You're better off staying away from that old guy if you don't want any trouble. He's been caught up in a bunch of lawsuits for invading people's privacy. People around here don't want to mess with him because of that. I got chills when I heard my neighbor's story. So Charles has been following me for the last 2 days. My mind was racing as I tried to think back on everything, making sure I hadn't messed up with my behavior or what I was wearing. I felt like a lost soul all day, couldn't focus on anything. I was just stoked to find a new place, but now I had to live in fear and be super careful because of my neighbor's weird and creepy reputation. I've never opened any of the curtains in my apartment, not even for a sec. This went on for 3 days, and I felt super suffocated. I called the building security and told them what was going on, hoping they'd step in and sort it all out. I decided not to show up to avoid making a scene since I had just moved in. About 2 days after I talked to building security, feeling a bit more at ease, I finally opened the curtains again. But surprisingly, the shadow was still there. I quickly called security again, and they said they couldn't get in touch with Mr. Charles. He might have gone to his son's for a few days. This isn't the first time we couldn't reach him. Are you guys serious? He's still at the window, staring at my apartment. We'll check it out and sort this ASAP. I stopped paying attention to what the security guard was saying. Remembering the binoculars my dad gave me back in high school, I started digging through the unpacked boxes to find them. I yanked the curtains all the way open and threw the window open, then grabbed the binoculars to check out the apartment across the street. At first, my head was spinning, so I put down the binoculars and started having a hard time breathing. Shakily, I lifted the binoculars to double-check what I saw, and that was the worst decision I ever made. The window of the apartment across the street had a man's body standing there with his head pressed against the glass. His body had patches of skin hanging down, and his eye sockets were dark and deep, with his mouth wide open like he was totally freaking out. I let out a huge scream, and the sound of terror echoed from the top floor, shattering the quiet vibe of the place. I rushed out of the house, banging on all the neighbors' doors, begging them to call the cops ASAP. The body was Mr. Charles, who had died about a week ago from a stroke. He had a pretty bad reputation, according to the neighbor, so nobody really cared that he hadn't showed up in days. Mr. Charles had a son living in the next city, and when he heard about his dad's death, he looked totally shocked and devastated. He played it off by saying they weren't really that close, which is why he hadn't checked in on Mr. Charles for days. I moved out of that apartment right away and crashed at a hotel for a few days before finding a new place. Even now, 8 years after that crazy incident, I still wonder, why was Mr. Charles standing against the window when he died?
Did his stroke really hit him out of nowhere? Or was there something else going on?
I've got no clue how long I've been stuck here. In this pitch black hell, time just stopped. All I remember was heading home from the gym. I got into my car, and boom, this shadowy figure came out of nowhere. Before I even had a chance to react, someone grabbed me from behind. They slammed a towel over my face, reeked of chemicals, and that was it. Everything went dark, and now, still darkness. My head was spinning, like I'd been hit with a brick. I tried to move, but there's barely any space. My hands reached up, felt wood. I stretched out to the sides, more wood. Reality started to sink in. I was lying in a freaking wooden box. Help! Somebody help me! I screamed, pounding the lid with everything I had. Nothing. Just this dull thud and something shifting. And then it hit me. They were burying me. Oh my God. They were burying me alive. Please. I'm Violet. My family's loaded. They'll pay whatever you want. Just don't do this. Listen, Violet. You've got 7 days. If your family doesn't pay up, you die in that box. You've got food, water, a blanket, and a flashlight. There's a tube to breathe through. If it rains, the pump will drain the water. I lost it, screaming, crying, begging, but all I got back was silence. My hands were trembling like crazy as I fumbled around for the flashlight. Finally found it. I flipped it on. The light stung my eyes. I squinted, trying to take in where I really was. The wooden box was rough, just big enough for me to lie down, barely stretch out. There was a bottle of water, a couple of protein bars, a thin-ass blanket, and a piece of paper. 7 days. If the family doesn't pay $5 million, you will be forgotten. Don't waste water and food. I thought about my parents. God, they must be freaking out. I'm their only kid. 5 million's a ton of money, but I knew they'd do whatever it took. The real question was, would they find me in time? I shut off the flashlight to save battery. No clue how long I laid there, but the air was getting heavy. Every breath felt tighter than the last. My sweat was turning sour, and the heat inside the box was climbing like crazy. I held it in for as long as I could, but eventually, I lost. I ended up peeing in the corner of the damn box. I stared at the water bottle. My throat was sandpaper dry, but I hesitated. What if it was poisoned? Tried counting numbers to stay calm. Got to... I don't even remember. I lost track. My body started slipping into this weird, restless sleep. Then suddenly I was back in my bedroom. Warm sunlight spilling through the curtains, the smell of pancakes drifting up from the kitchen. But then that cold, damp feeling yanked me back to reality. I woke up. Just darkness. Thick and heavy. The smell of sweat and piss was everywhere. Thirst clawed at my throat. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the bottle, took a tiny sip. The cool water hit my throat like some kind of miracle, but I didn't dare drink more than that. Just one sip. I was starving. I started talking to myself. Come on, Violet. You gotta make it through this. You're only 17. You've got your whole life ahead of you. But then this other voice kicked in. You're gonna die here, in the dark, alone, forgotten. I flipped on the flashlight just to check that I was still breathing, that this wasn't some god-awful nightmare I'd wake up from. The beam lit up the scratch marks I'd made on the side of the coffin, wild, panicked clawing from the first night. The temperature kept swinging like crazy. The heat came in waves, making me sweat like crazy, and then suddenly it'd drop and I'd be shivering in that damn thin blanket. The smell in the box was unbearable now. I tried breathing through my mouth to escape the stench, but then I panicked. What if I was using up more oxygen? Everything started to blur together. I remembered stuff I'd never paid attention to before. The scent of Mom's perfume, the way Dad laughed at his own dumb jokes, tiny little pieces of life I never thought I'd miss. Please. Please don't let me die in here. Nothing. No reply. It must have been 3 days, maybe more. Hunger tore at my gut like an animal. thirst made my mouth feel like it was cracking open, tongue swollen, stuck to the roof of my mouth. And the exhaustion, God, it was like my body was slowly shutting down, cell by cell. Sleep became the enemy. I couldn't let myself go under for too long. Every time my heavy eyelids slid shut and opened again, that same panic hit me. What if I used up all the oxygen? What if I drifted off and never woke up? I tried pushing against the lid with everything I had left. Nothing. It wouldn't budge. I clawed at the sides of the box till my fingernails cracked and bled. That tiny box was making me lose my mind. I couldn't sit up, couldn't stretch out. Every inch of my body screamed from lying in the same damn position for so long. Someone, please, I croaked. But no more tears came. I was completely dried out, inside and out. That's when hope started slipping. Maybe my family couldn't pay. Maybe they couldn't find me in time. Maybe this was where I'd die. Would it hurt? Or would it feel like just falling asleep? I had no idea how long I drifted in and out like that, half conscious, half delirious. Time didn't mean anything anymore. Everything melted into one big mess in my head. Then, a sound. From above. Was it real? Was I hallucinating again? I froze, listening, digging, metal hitting rock, footsteps, voices, urgent, panicked. It was getting louder. Someone was digging. Here! I'm here! I tried to yell, but it came out like a dry whisper. Help me! I slammed the lid with the last bit of strength I had, and then light, blinding, painful, but the most beautiful damn thing I'd ever seen. The lid flew open, faces leaned over me, people shouting over each other. She's alive! Get an ambulance! They pulled me out of the box. Fresh air hit my lungs like a punch. I coughed hard, gasping, choking on it. Someone threw a blanket over me. There were flashing lights everywhere, cop cars, voices shouting. Next thing I knew, I was in the back of an ambulance. When we got to the hospital, the doctors couldn't believe I was still alive. 83 hours buried underground. I'd lost over 20 pounds. My body was wrecked from dehydration, but weirdly, my mind felt clear. Like something deep inside me had dragged me back from the edge. In the days that followed, everything started coming together. Turns out, they were part of a crew that kidnapped rich kids. They'd been watching me for weeks, following my routine, waiting for the right moment. The box had been buried in the middle of nowhere, out in some remote wooded area, 18 miles from the city. If it hadn't been for a random witness who spotted their sketchy car, I wouldn't be here right now. After that whole nightmare, even the tiniest space made me panic. Darkness wasn't just darkness anymore. It stuck with me, like this shadow I couldn't shake. But still, that experience changed me. I stopped taking things for granted. Every single breath of air, every sliver of sunlight, every second I got to spend with my family, it all became priceless. The dashboard clock glowed 10:47 p.m. as I pulled into the Shell station near my place. My gas tank was practically on empty. I had to fill up tonight, or I'd be stranded on my way to work tomorrow morning. No one was visible in the gas station area. The convenience store next to it was brightly lit, looking like it was still open for business. After filling my tank, I headed into the convenience store to pay. The automatic glass doors slid open, and a chime beeped. Inside, it was brightly lit, but no one was behind the counter. Hello? I called out, but no one answered. I heard the sound of running water from the restroom in the back of the store. Maybe the employee was in there and would be out in a minute. I decided to browse around and grab a few things while I waited. I walked down the snack aisle, picking up a bag of Doritos and a pack of cookies. As I stood in front of the cooler, choosing a bottle of water, I caught a glimpse of a dark shadow darting across the far end of the aisle, near the magazine rack. I froze, my heart quickening. I stared into the aisle for a full minute, listening. I'm listening for everything, but I see nothing. Probably just the shadow of a tree outside from a passing car. Or maybe I was just tired and imagining things. I took my items to the counter and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. The running water in the restroom just kept going. "Excuse me, anyone here?" I called again, louder this time. Still no answer. A sense of unease started to creep in. I moved closer to the restroom, calling out again. Silence, except for the water. I tried the door, but it was locked. The employee was probably inside and in trouble. I grabbed my phone and called 911. I'm at the Shell gas station on Elm Street. No employee visible, and I've heard water running in the restroom since I got here. I'm worried something might have happened. "We'll send a patrol car right over." I waited outside the store. About 15 minutes later, a police car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out. "Are you the one who called this in?" "That's right. I came in about 20 minutes ago. No one's been at the counter, and I've been hearing constant running water from the restroom." They quickly entered the store, and I followed. The younger officer went straight to the restroom while the other checked around the counter. "It's locked," the younger officer said. "Anyone in there? Police." Still only silence, accompanied by the persistent sound of running water. After a moment, they decided to force the door. The lock broke, and the younger officer stepped inside first. The very next second, he backed out, his face a mask of horror, without saying another word. I couldn't see what was inside, but when the door swung open, revealing the back of it, my body went cold. A deep red coating splattered across the back of the door, forming streaks and long drips running down. A section of the restroom floor that I could glimpse from my angle was also stained red. Within the next 20 minutes, the place became a crime scene. Ambulances, more police cars, detectives, and a forensics team. They strung yellow tape around the area. I was kept there as the sole witness. I recounted the entire incident to a detective. About an hour later, a forensics officer announced, "The victim is Kevin Morrison, 23 years old. He was working the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. Appears to have been attacked with a blunt object. Passed away about an hour before you called the police." I was stunned, but what truly shocked me was the time frame. That meant I had arrived at the gas station right after it happened. The dark shadow I saw earlier wasn't an illusion. "We'll be in touch if we need any more information. You can head home," a detective told me. I drove home feeling unsettled. I parked my car in the garage and entered the house. Flicking on the kitchen light, I grabbed a beer from the fridge. I needed to calm down after what had just happened. As I was drinking my beer and looking out the kitchen window, I saw a dark shadow move across the backyard. My heart pounded. I turned off the kitchen light and looked closer. Nothing, just trees and the fence. Was I hallucinating? I went upstairs to my bedroom and changed. I was about to go to bed when I saw the dark shadow again. This time, it was through my bedroom window, moving along the front yard. Not an illusion. Someone was outside my house. I called 911 for the second time that night. Someone's breaking into my yard. The address is 1247 Wellington Street. After the call ended, I sat in the dark bedroom looking out. 5 minutes later, a police car arrived. One of the officers was the same one I'd met at the gas station. He recognized me. I told him about the dark shadow I'd seen. They checked around the house with flashlights but found no signs of forced entry or footprints. "You might just be really stressed after tonight, sir. We'll patrol this area more frequently." After they left, I locked the door carefully and checked all the windows. But I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the victim and the dark figure at the gas station. At 3 a.m., I heard a noise downstairs, like someone opening a kitchen cabinet. I grabbed my baseball bat and slowly crept down. Light streamed from the open refrigerator. "Who's there?" I called out. A man turned to face me, a large knife in his hand. He spoke, surprisingly calmly and casually. He saw me take the money from the safe. I didn't have a choice. "Now you've seen me too," he said, stepping towards me with the knife. I swung the baseball bat. It connected with his wrist, and the knife clattered to the floor. He yelled in pain, then lunged at me. I bolted for the front door, burst into the street, and yelled for help. My neighbor's lights flickered on, and they helped me call the police. Within minutes, the police arrived. This time, there were 2 cars and 6 officers. They surrounded my house, but when they went inside, they found no one. The knife was still on the kitchen floor. The back door was open. He had escaped. The police took me to a hotel for the night to ensure my safety. 3 days later, they caught the culprit when he tried to use the gas station employee's credit card at another gas station about 50 miles south. He was identified as Danny, 28, a drug addict with a history of theft. According to his confession, he went to the gas station intending to steal money from the safe. Kevin, the employee, discovered him. During the struggle, Danny knocked Kevin unconscious with a wrench and dragged him into the restroom, intending to lock him in. But Kevin unexpectedly woke up. Danny, in a panic, committed the horrific act. In court, Danny was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Since then, every time I drive past that Shell station, I still remember that fateful night. Some memories from your teenage years just stick with you, no matter how many years go by. They're like ghosts you can't shake. The story I'm about to tell happened almost 20 years ago, when I was a senior at Madison High School. But every time I think about it, I still get chills, just like the first time it happened. That day, I was standing in front of the main gate of Madison High that night. The air was pretty chilly. The 10-foot-tall steel gate had been locked up tight since the afternoon. The yellow streetlights shined down on the faded metal sign that read, Madison High School, home of the Eagles. I glanced at the clock on my phone. We were supposed to meet at 11 p.m., but I got there early because I couldn't sleep. Ever since Marcus brought up the idea in the cafeteria, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Exploring the school at night. Marcus's older brother had done it last year and told stories about it like it was some legendary adventure. You guys know this school has a basement? Marcus had said. His eyes lit up with excitement. My brother said it's like a whole maze down there, and the back window is broken, so it's easy to get in. Jake scoffed. Are you nuts? What about the security guard? They don't work weekends. My brother checked. Emma shook her head. Sounds too risky. But eventually, all four of us agreed. Maybe it was because this week had been so boring with all the tests. We wanted something to remember our senior year. Footsteps on the sidewalk made me turn around. Emma appeared from around the corner. Tyler, I still think this is a bad idea. It's just exploring, that's all. It'll be a memory to tell, I reassured Emma. Jake and Marcus showed up from down the street. Ready? Marcus asked, his eyes practically sparkling with excitement. Are you sure no one's in there? Emma asked one last time. The security guard only works Monday through Thursday. The school's totally empty on weekends, Jake replied. We walked toward the school. Marcus led us around to the back of the building, where the basement windows were. Here it is. My brother said this window's been broken since the summer. The old metal-framed window had a crack in the glass in one corner. Jake tried to pulling it up, and the frame moved up and down a couple of inches. All right, who's going down first? Jake grinned. I'll go first, I said, wanting to look brave in front of Emma. I pushed the window frame up high, the metal creaking in the dark. The smell of mildew from the basement hit my nose as I squeezed through the opening. My feet touched the concrete floor. Emma slid down next, then Marcus and Jake. All four of us stood in the basement, pulling out our phones and turning on our flashlights. The light shined on stacks of cardboard boxes and old water pipes along the walls. This place is bigger than I thought, Marcus said, shining his light around the room. The basement stretched out with lots of dark corners and doorways. We spread out to explore the basement. There were many small rooms filled with old school supplies, old machinery, and things that weren't used anymore. After about 5 minutes, I decided to go upstairs. I headed toward the stairs, hearing footsteps following me. I didn't turn around, thinking it was Emma or Marcus wanting to come along. The sound of sneakers hitting the concrete floor was steady, really close. The basement door wasn't locked. I turned the handle, and the iron door opened with a slight creak. The school's main hallway stretched out in the dark, the lockers on both sides forming long shadows. Don't worry, just a quick look, I whispered. The footsteps were still following me. Hey, do you see? I turned around. No one was there. My phone vibrated. Jake's name was on the screen. Where are you, Tyler? We're looking for you all over the basement. Jake's voice echoed. I'm upstairs. Did someone follow me up here? No, we're still down here. My heart started to pound. Suddenly, a laugh echoed from far away, lingering in the small space. My whole body froze, my mouth trembling with fear. The laugh echoed again, louder this time. A tall figure appeared at the end of the hallway. It was too dark around him, so I could only make out his eyes staring straight at me. Jake! I screamed. I ran as fast as I could. The hallway seemed endless. Heavy footsteps behind me, steady, unhurried, like the person knew I couldn't get away. I ran toward the stairs, my phone still connected to the call. The basement door was still open. I rushed down the steps. Emma screamed when she saw me. What's wrong? We have to go now. Someone's in the school. Jake looked at me skeptically. Are you sure? Maybe it was just a shadow or... Footsteps echoed down the stairs. All four of us heard it. Emma gripped my hand. Marcus immediately turned off his phone. We all hurried to leave. Marcus climbed through the window first. Emma followed. I had to push her up because her hands were shaking too much. Jake went next. I was last, constantly looking back at the stairs. We ran out of the building, across the empty parking lot, to the sidewalk across the street. When I looked back, I saw a figure standing right at the window watching us, their hands pressed against the glass, their face close to the window. I saw the face of a middle-aged man with thinning hair and two eyes staring straight at us. Did you guys see that? I pointed toward the window, my voice still shaking. Emma held my arm tightly. He's watching us. Don't tell anyone about this, and never come back here again, Jake said, his voice more serious than ever. The figure was still standing there as we walked away. 2 weeks later, news spread throughout town about the police arresting an intruder at Madison High. A 43-year-old man named Robert Henley had been hiding in the school for 3 months after being released from prison for harassment. He had been living in the basement, eating food from the cafeteria. The news report stated that Henley was a former student of the school, graduating in 1999. He was first arrested in 2018 for harassment and illegal entry. Emma called me that night. Did you see the news? What do you think he would have done if he had caught us that night? I didn't answer Emma. Some questions are best left unanswered. We kept our promise not to tell this story, leaving behind unanswered questions and a permanent, unshakable fear.
Thank you for watching until the end. As mentioned earlier, our goal of reaching 50,000 subscribers in 2026 is still ongoing. If you enjoy these stories, please give us a hand and support us.
you.